while they were. Hey, y'all, I'm Carrie.
I'm MawMaw.
And this is Mom. This episode contains topics and language that may not be suitable for all listeners, and topics that may be triggering to some. Listener discretion is advised. All right, welcome back. We are glad to be back in your headphones for what promises to be an unforgettable year of deep dives into history's most compelling and frustrating mysteries. Cases that haunt the consensus of American law enforcement, and I hope you all enjoyed a safe and restorative holiday season. Because today, we're going to break that apart.
There she goes again.
Yep. We're undertaking a truly monumental task. We're charting the course of a notorious decades-long campaign of poison pen letters that
Cool.
targeted an entire community, resulted in a suspicious death, an assassination attempt, and ultimately one of the most catastrophic miscarriages of justice in American history.
Oh, crap.
Mm-hmm. The sheer audacity of the perpetrator who managed to maintain complete anonymity while orchestrating a complex, multi-layered criminal enterprise, leveraging everything from forensic misdirection to political pressure. And it remains just as breathtaking today as it did then.
Dang.
Mm-hmm. So before we get into this, Mandy was supposed to be back this week, but she's been sick for almost 2 weeks.
Oh.
Yep. Thought she had
Well, we've had sickness in our house in the last week, so.
right. So we thought she had COVID. Thankfully, it is not the Rona. What?
When you said that.
Yep. So thankfully, it's not that. She just has some kind of, just nasty.
Yuck.
Yeah. So hopefully she'll be better, and hopefully we'll be back next week.
We can do it remotely, or?
Yeah, because she's still there till she gets home.
She better hurry up and get home.
Now that
Tired of playing with the child.
a lot of it has been settled and they're just kind of waiting on some things to be finalized, you know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So
They don't get in no hurry for nobody.
no, you know how all that stuff goes. But yeah, hopefully she'll be better so she can be back next week full time, and we'll have Mandy back with us.
I'm being replaced.
Well, she wasn't supposed to be gone this long, but you know how these things go.
I do.
Yep. So anyway, today we are going to talk about the epic, complex, and frankly agonizing saga of the Circleville Letters.
Cool.
You know this one?
No.
It is wild.
Is it?
Yes. Okay, so this case is not merely a story of anonymous communication. It is a profound tetris of domestic betrayal, political corruption, systematic forensic failure, and psychological warfare. So sophisticated and meticulously executed that the true culprit was never definitively caught.
Cool. So that is a real whodunit.
Yep. So the shadow
Nice.
The shadow of this mystery stretches across decades, from the seemingly tranquil conservative streets of 1977 Circleville, Ohio, to the cold steel bars of a state penitentiary in the 1980s.
Dang.
Yeah. So we are going to meticulously, almost painfully, examine every piece of evidence, every suspect, every chilling note, and the lasting corrosive impact this campaign had. So everyone grab your strongest coffee, settle in, because we are going to need the time to truly unpack this chilling, complicated narrative. So, are you ready?
Hey, I've got my boots on.
So our story begins in Circleville, Ohio, a community of approximately 12,000 residents nestled deeply in the fertile fields of the Scioto River Valley. So we're in the mid-1970s. The town was founded on a unique circular plan, a deliberate attempt by early settlers to foster unity. But this history had instead developed into a highly restrictive social environment where standing was built over generations and preserved through relentless, often suffocating conformity. It was the kind of town where high school football was practically religion, where every secret was known but rarely spoken aloud, creating a pressure cooker of suppressed resentments.
Nice.
Anyone that has lived in or grew up in a small town knows exactly what I'm talking about here.
Yep.
Mhm. So the illusion of small town integrity was policed not just by neighbors, but by authorities as well. Sheriff Dwight Radcliffe, serving his first term, was committed to maintaining a crime free image. And that commitment, image over reality, is the one political failure that doomed this entire case. The principal players were figures of this establishment. Mary Gillespie, the primary target here, was a local school bus driver, a trusted public servant. Her husband, Ron Gillespie, was a sheriff's deputy, a figure of visible authority. They were a standard, respected Midwestern couple. Every other person who would become a target or a suspect, which included Ron's sister, Karen Sue Adams, and her husband, Paul Freshour, was connected by blood, marriage, or by simple proximity. The,
Dang.
yeah, yep. We haven't even really got into it yet. Just wait. This deep social saturation was the writer's crucial advantage. To understand the terror, you must understand this environment. Ron Gillespie was not just a deputy. He was a man who felt the pressure of his badge keenly. He was known to be a dedicated, if not somewhat hot-tempered officer. His wife married. His wife Mary carried the immense responsibility of transporting the town's children every day, a fact that the writer weaponized. This wasn't a family living on the fringe either. They were part of the social machinery.
Well, break out the linen napkins.
I cannot. The poison pen didn't just attack them, though. It attacked their most sacred roles. Ron's role as a protector and Mary's role as a nurturer.
See, that's not cool.
The writer knew that in a town like Circleville, destroying reputation was a fate worse than death. It was social alienation. This environment, where institutional protection and moral judgment were one and the same, created the perfect conditions for the writer to operate. So, who do you call when the police are the target and the community is the judge?
And Ghostbusters.
The the answer, tragically, is no one. Now, to fully understand the terror in Circleville, we must first look at the psychological landscape of the poison pen writer. Throughout history, from Roman satires to Victorian scandal sheets, anonymous letters have been a weapon of profound psychological warfare. Criminologists and forensic pathologists characterize the typical poison pen writer as possessing traits of passive aggressive disorder, paranoid personality disorder, or narcissistic rage. These writers are often highly intelligent, highly organized, and feel overlooked or marginalized by the very society they seek to destroy. They crave a sense of control and power, which is absent in their own lives. The anonymity provides a mask, allowing them to express deeply re- repressed envy, resentment, and moral outrage. Crucially, the poison pen writer aims not for physical harm, but for total social destruction and to erode the victim's reputation, professional standing, and mental health until they break. This Circleville case is unique precisely because the writer crossed the line from, from psychological warfare to physical violence. So it crosses into an area where most poison pen writers do not. The psychological motivation was so strong in this that it transitioned from symbolic murder, that is, destroying reputation, to actual murder.
That gum.
hmm This suggests a deepening sense of self righteous entitlement and total emotional detachment. The Circleville letter writer embodies two complex psychological concepts rarely seen in petty criminals: moral entrepreneurship, sublimated hostility.
See, I don't understand people.
Whether they're crazy?
Yeah, just live your life. I mean, come on now.
Miserable people do miserable things.
No, honey, I get that. I do. I get that. It's just that why do you have to be ugly to other people? Is what I'm saying. You
That
know,
that is one of the world's greatest mysteries.
no kidding.
Yep.
It's just like oh, I can't with these people.
Just go away.
Just like you can't with me.
Right. So the writer was a moral entrepreneur because they were acting not out of simple jealousy, but from a profound conviction that they were purifying the town.
Oh Lord, people just I just can't.
The right. Oh. So the writer appointed themselves the judge, jury, and executioner of Circleville's moral code, meticulously targeting anyone that they deemed hypocritical or corrupt.
See, that's what I'm talking about. Holier now, people.
Yeah, pretty much. This self-bestowed sense of
Get me on
morals
my nerves.
This self-bestowed sense of moral superiority is the central fuel for the sustained campaign. Furthermore, the letters represent a classic case of sublimated hostility. The writer posed deep, violent anger, which they were unable to express directly in their daily conforming life. So instead, this raw hostility was sublimated, being channeled into the acceptable, anonymous format of the written word. The use of all caps printing, the cutting words from newspapers, and the use of vile language were not just disguises. They were physical, therapeutic expressions of the repressed rage. Then the transition from letters to the booby trap gun represents the moment sublimation.
Wait a minute. Booby trap gun?
Mm-hmm.
Where'd that come in
Well,
from?
we'll get there, I promise.
Okay.
Yep, we'll get there.
Get me all confused.
Yep. Little Easter eggs here. We'll get there. And the okay, we're
Uh-oh.
so the gun represents the moment sublimation failed and the raw hostility erupted into near fatal action. Understanding this shift from psychological weapon to literal weapon is key in profiling who the true perpetrator actually is.
Excuse me.
So let's get into it.
Well, it's about time. Give me all these little Easter egg things, whatever you call them, and get me all excited, and then you don't tell me nothing.
That's what makes it good.
Okay.
Yep. So the psychological assault began seemingly out of nowhere in March of 1977.
Shoot, I was just a teenager.
Mary Gillespie was ending her shift one afternoon, the bright yellow of her Westfall School District bus shimmering in the winter sun. She parked the bus at the depot, the sound of the engine dying, leaving an immediate silence. She found the very first letter not in her home mailbox, but tucked deliberately under a windshield wiper on the bus itself.
How'd that? If she just drove the bus, how did you not see it?
Well, if she wasn't using the windshield wipers,
You still got to look out the.
if it wasn't very big,
Oh, okay. Well, okay. And I will.
because look at how big a window is on a school bus.
Yeah, but still, you got to check everything.
Let's be real. How often do you walk out to the car and check the windshield wiper?
Every time I walk out the door,
I don't.
I do.
I don't. I just get in my car.
There could be a rattlesnake sitting on your windshield, and you wouldn't even know.
I'm in the car. Why would I care if they're first of all, we live in the Midwest. There are no daggum rattlesnakes out here.
I'm just used as an example.
Second,
Okay, a big old huge spider.
I'm in the car. The spider can't get me. I don't care if it's there. I'm gonna turn the windshield wiper on and get rid of it. I'm in the car. What's it gonna do? Burrow through the glass?
Hey, you never know nowadays.
Spiders don't burrow, Mama.
Okay, put a big old web over your windshield where you can't see. Go on with your story.
Oh my god. Okay, so this placement was a crucial detail. It showed the writer had access to the bus depot, that they were monitoring her movements, and wanted the letter to be found at her place of employment, where the shame would begin immediately. Following this first letter, they were chillingly consistent. They were always anonymous, typed or meticulously printed in all capital block letters, a tactic that is known as performative illiteracy. This is a painstaking, time consuming effort to disguise the writer's natural hand and linguistic rhythm while subtly suggesting a low class, easily dismissed threat.
You didn't read what was in the letter?
I have some of them, yeah. I didn't include all of them because there were a ton, but I have bits from some of them, yeah.
Cool.
So the tradecraft of the envelope was even more telling of the writer's obsessive organizational skills and contempt for authority. This was not casual writing. This was an operation. The names and addresses were often hand cut and pasted in the style of a creepy old school ransom note.
Sweet.
So I don't know if you remember, but you remember I used to watch that movie Mean Girls?
Yeah.
Okay, you remember the pink like burn book
Mhm.
and how those are like cut out newspaper letters like that,
I know what that is.
or like in the Silence of the Lambs, how they
Great
had
movie.
how
Great
they
movie.
had those letters in the classified
Great
ads.
movie.
Yep, just like that.
Love Silence of the Lambs.
Isn't that creepy?
Ugh.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, great movie.
That has a scare factor just by doing that. Okay, so think of the sheer amount of time that this took. Sitting alone, cutting tiny little letters using a rubber cement or common household adhesive, all to conceal the identity of the person who felt they had the moral authority to ruin someone's life.
Rubber cement stinks.
So it's like that, doesn't it have like a
Gooey,
paintbrush kind of
tight.
thing?
It's like a sponge,
Yeah, and it's like,
and it's nasty to work with. It is messy.
yep, they either use that or like something else that you would have around your house that you would use for
Right, good old Elmer's glue.
maybe, I don't know.
Every household had that. You used it to fix everything. Broken cut handles off cups. You know, they didn't have plastic.
Just throw the cup away. Why are you gluing it back
Well, if it
together?
was like an antique or a teacup, you would glue the handle back on.
Why would you be using it if it was antique?
Because people do.
So, anyway, the deliberate use of various print fonts from different sources shows a highly organized, compartmentalized mind. And then the arrogance was clear because some envelopes even used hand drawn stamps or simulated postal markings instead of real postage.
This person was really odd.
Right. That's what I was going to say. Isn't that so weird? Why are
Just
you hand drawing a stamp? Just put a stamp on it. And how did it go
because
through the
back,
mail?
well, number one, back in those days, the stamps weren't self sticky. You had to lick them suckers, and they were
Ugh,
nasty.
ew. But how would it even go through the mail if the stamp was hand drawn?
It wouldn't. They'd hand delivered it,
That's weird. That's so weird. Okay, anyway,
or you got some not too bright postman.
maybe, I don't know, it's the '70s, so,
Somebody was on something.
yeah, I don't know. Okay, so this was a highly risky and unnecessary technique that demonstrated the writer's arrogance and intellectual contempt for the very postal inspectors who might investigate them. So they're like, "You're too stupid to realize this isn't a real stamp."
Hey, we had some good drugs in the 70s.
Oh my god. So this is a psychological stamp of superiority, a signature of one who believes they are above the law. The sender was always careful to postmark the letters from Columbus, Ohio, which is the state capital, and is approximately 30 miles north of Circleville. This sophisticated geographical strategy was a tactical choice. It wasn't coincidence. This was just far enough away to frustrate local sheriff department's efforts, but close enough to prove that the writer was local and watching. So with this, we have to ask, who drives 60 miles round trip to mail a letter?
Not me.
Like that anyway, I have the answer to that question. Because doing this eliminates local post office employees as potential witnesses.
Well, that makes sense.
Because if they're local, post office people are gonna know who they are.
Yeah.
And it also forces a local department without budget or jurisdiction to beg for help from state and federal agencies, which is gonna slow the investigation down because now they have to wait for the big guns to get there.
And some of them ain't too bright either.
Yeah, especially back then. Man,
Even you cracked me up that time. I'm sorry.
investigators later noted that the mass mailings and the most psychologically damaging letters often coincided with major holidays, local elections, or, are you ready? The Circleville Pumpkin Show.
What the hell?
Mhm.
Okay. I'm flabbergasted.
Hey, we can't say much, okay? We Centerville has a fucking pancake day.
Well, yeah, that's true. That's a good thing.
Morganton back home has a blackberry fest.
Lenore has a blueberry festival.
Right. Somewhere, I can't remember what town 'cause it was a few hours from us. We never went, but there's a strawberry fest.
There's a fest for everything.
Exactly. So, I mean, can't really say much.
I think there's a corn fest somewhere around here.
I think so too.
Well, we are in the corn capital of the world.
Right, exactly. I just thought it was funny. So, this proves that the writer was systematically timing their attacks for peak visibility and emotional devastation.
But if she I don't understand this because she's sending letters to people like,
Well, we don't know if it's a man or a woman.
no, the person that she's sending it to, who's to say they just don't look up, "You're stupid," and throw it away, where nobody else sees it?
Well, we'll get into what the letters are.
It's just dumb.
Yeah, we'll get there. We're laying the groundwork for it.
Well, hurry up.
Okay. This is all important. I
Everything's
promise.
important.
Right. All important. I promise. So by weaponizing the calendar, the writer ensured the terror was an organized community wide affliction. So they wanted everyone in the community to be affected by this, not just
This
who was
person
receiving
really
the letter.
thinks they're holier than thou.
Right. See? Told you it was all
Heifer,
important.
you ain't above God, so
And this wasn't just the quality of the disguise that was shocking, it was the sheer quantity. This campaign wasn't a one off emotional attack, it was a half volume, decade long enterprise that required obsessive dedication.
you think?
The sheer volume of the Circleville letters is one of the clearest indicators of the author's psychological state.
You're drinking the Delulu lemonade.
Are you ready for the level of delulu that this got to?
Yes.
Over the entire duration of this campaign, investigators documented and recovered well over 400 pieces of anonymous correspondence.
Talk about writer's cramp.
Yeah, whoever this was didn't have no writer's block, that's for sure.
Her fingers were stuck together like this from playing with that rubber cement.
So, maintaining this operational tempo required a consistent, high risk, and costly logistical commitment. So, let's think about the scale. The author needed to acquire hundreds of envelopes, multiple types of paper, because there were several types of paper used, replacement blades, dozens of sheets of stamps, always purchased out of town, and bulk adhesive.
She was just taking dipping it in vats of
I don't know, but whoever it was has way too much time on their hands.
no shit. I
Get
thought I was bored. Hello?
right. Like, find a hobby, man. You got way too much time if you could be sending out 400 letters. That is, I don't even think I've sent out that much mail.
I haven't found that much mail. and I'm 65. And back then, we didn't have email or text messages.
Right.
Only mobile phone I had was stretching the cord out on the kitchen phone on the kitchen from the kitchen wall to the living room. No, seriously.
I know. I
I mean,
remember
that was our mobile phone.
I know, I remember you used to have one when I was little.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah, you still had one.
we had a house phone.
If I remember correctly, Papa still had one of the
Rotaries.
right, there we go. I always forget what it's called. I know
We
what it
always
is,
had
but I always forget.
great-grandpa had a
Yep,
cordless phone.
yep,
Cordless phone. Of course, he was old. He was really old. I was just learning before he
right.
passed. I was just learning to use a cell phone.
For a long time, though, grandpa had, a rotary phone still. If I remember, it was on the wall
Yeah, but
for
he
a long
didn't use
time.
it because he couldn't hear on it as good as he could with the cordless.
Right, 'cause
Because you
cordless is
think I'm
louder.
deaf?
I know.
That old fart had me beat.
Okay, anyway, sorry, guys. So the systematic procurement of these items, likely using cash to avoid a paper trail, and the hundreds of separate trips to Columbus to ensure the postmarks were non-local. Remember, this was a 60-mile round trip each time.
Like you said, this person had too much time on their hands.
Right. This proves that this malicious enterprise was not a hobby, but a central, dominant, and all-consuming commitment in the writer's life. Yeah. So this relentless output underscores that the true culprit was someone who organized their daily existence around the continuation of this terror. Get a life, my guy.
Or my girl.
Right. Like the
Some
core accusation was simple and it was brutal. Mary was having an affair with the school superintendent, Gordon Massey.
nice.
The letters were immediately vile, filled with self righteous moral judgment and lurid language, threatening to shame Mary, quote, out of Ohio if she didn't confess to her, quote, sins.
But isn't what this person doing a sin also?
Right.
So people who live in glass houses use the rock.
Don't point a finger when you got three pointing back, buddy. hmm So the language used by the writer wasn't just accusatory, it was designed to be sexually and morally humiliating,
Dang.
an attempt at total character assassination. These letters didn't just mention the alleged affair. They often described lurid, invented scenarios and used sickeningly crude, specific insults against Mary, calling her a quote, cheap whore, and a quote, slut who sleeps around.
Was she watching?
I don't know, apparently.
Ew. Ew.
To her husband, Ron, the author didn't just question his tolerance. They called him a quote, cockold, a cuckold. Sorry,
A what?
cuckold.
Oh, it's
Um,
it's a man whose wife is having an affair with another man.
oh, okay. Got you.
Okay.
And going further by calling him a quote, worthless excuse for a man.
See, I think this person's watching them and like spying on them, and that's just creepy.
Right. So this attacked his masculinity in the most primal and public way possible.
No kidding.
So for the community members who also received letters, they contained veiled threats about their own undisclosed financial or moral failings, stating, quote, we know your dark secret and we are watching.
Oh, that's just wrong.
hmm So this writer was creating a personalized campaign of shame for every single recipient, making each reader feel that they were the only one exposed to the author's relentless judging gaze.
Now, where does this person get time to follow all these people around, find this information out?
Right, that's why I'm saying, who has time for this? I don't know. So the writer rapidly broadened the scope of this attack because the writer was targeting the very structure of the town itself. They employed the foot in the door technique, using Mary's scandal as leverage to expose the entire town's hypocrisy, sending letters to dozens of local politicians, business owners, and police officers.
This is somebody that knows everything.
hmm Crucially, many of these envelopes were sent explicitly to their place of business or practice, transforming the gossip into a mechanism for financial and professional destruction that threatened the livelihood of the entire local establishment.
Somebody's been listening in to the Liars Club.
Pretty much. This proved that the writer's true mission was a campaign of economic and social sabotage against the entire Circleville power structure.
That's crazy.
So they were looking to take everyone down.
Yeah, you know why? Because and this is the way I'm looking at it, they either got turned down for a job,
Yeah.
lost a political race,
Mm-hmm.
or is just jealous as hell.
Yeah. That all makes sense.
It all fits.
Right. So the writer's access to highly sensitive information, which includes specific arguments between Ron and Mary, fueled persistent local rumors that the perpetrator either worked for the local telephone company or had some kind of technical training that allowed them to tap or intercept into local phone lines.
The FBI.
Oh my God. Which would be how they could know all of this stuff.
Well, yeah, I was just kidding about
I
that.
know,
Yeah.
I know.
I
Nichols,
watch too much television.
this theory of technical surveillance suggested the source of the terror was not just gossip, but information gathered through illicit professional means.
Maybe it is the FBI
Oh
or
my God.
the CIA.
Jesus. You're going to get us canceled before, like,
I'm just kidding, folks.
we're barely in the new year, Mama. Calm down.
I'm just kidding.
So the writer also presented an initial out for Mary.
Oh, so she could leave her husband.
No, so that way the writer would leave her alone. So if she confessed and resigned from her job, the letters would stop.
Yeah, but what's her affair got to do with the kids? It don't.
I don't know. Not really sure.
It's not like
The two aren't connected. Yeah, I don't know. She's like, yeah, I couldn't figure that out either. So this gave the initial campaign the appearance of a moral crusade. Because they're like, well, we'll stop writing letters if you admit what you've done and
holier than
then
thou.
leave your job. Yep. But beyond the careful cutting and the use of the typewriter, the most psychologically fascinating element was the writer's hand printing style itself. It was designed to look amateurish, but a closer forensic look reveals a disturbing level of self control. The anonymous block printing was not the handwriting of a reckless man. It was the meticulous effort of an obsessive compulsive organizer. In forensic document analysis, the author's use of all caps printing is often called a performative disguise. This is an attempt to signal low intelligence or crude motivation while actually requiring incredible concentration to maintain consistency over years. So this wasn't someone who was, as they say, of low intelligence. This was actually someone very smart and very controlled.
Wasn't me, that's damn sure.
Document experts later noted the chilling level of letter form consistency maintained across hundreds of letters. So, for example, the capital T in the Circleville letters often featured a crossbar that was slightly long and centered consistently, and the capital I's were uniformly formed with scripts, suggesting a highly disciplined, almost mechanical approach to their writing. This consistency proves that the writer, whoever they were, dedicated themselves for years to suppressing their natural handwriting rhythm.
Shoot, my handwriting's lucky you can read it at all.
Oh my gosh.
No, the older I get, the harder it is for me to, like, write a letter and write a
Oh,
letter
yeah, that makes sense.
because the arthritis in my hand. I mean, even your Aunt Debbie, when we were younger, we both had pretty handwriting. But now I've just kind of,
This consistency proves that the writer, oh, I said that part. This discipline became a fatal error for the prosecution years later.
for the process. Okay.
We'll get there, I promise. So the fact that the author was so meticulous in masking their handwriting makes the reliance on the statistically common typewriter defect in the next act an even larger investigative failure. The investigator who chose to ignore the unique handwritten discipline of the block print in favor of a common defect on a standard typewriter key was either deeply incompetent or deliberately guided toward a pre selected scapegoat. Now, when Mary and Ron Gillespie first presented the Pickaway County Sheriff's Department with the letters, their complaints were met with skepticism, a defensive posture endemic to small town policing. They did not see a dangerous criminal, they saw a local embarrassment. The internal theory, which was the self victimization theory, and according to it, Mary was the author. This allowed Sheriff Radcliffe's department to dismiss a dangerous situation as a mere domestic drama.
And I can get that. I get that.
Right. So, why was this theory so convenient for them? Well, that's because it allowed Sheriff Radcliffe to keep the problem contained within his jurisdiction.
Yeah, these small town sheriffs. No offense to anybody out there, but back then, a lot of them were lazy.
They want the credit.
They want the credit, but they don't want to do the work.
Pretty much. Okay. So this is crucial because Sheriff Radcliffe's department quickly ruled the letters as a domestic disturbance. And by doing this, they effectively blocked the possibility of a federal investigation by the FBI or the U.S. Postal Inspection Service, otherwise known as USPIS, USPIS.
EIS.
hmm The U.S. Postal Inspection Service.
Oh, gotcha.
Missed that part?
Yeah, I missed that part.
So to explain this a little more, if the letters had been immediately classified as extortion, harassment, or criminal intimidation across state lines due to the Columbus postmarks, the sheriff's department would have been forced to turn the evidence over to the to USPIS. USPIS has extensive resources in order to track down mail fraud, analyze paper and glue, and conduct multi-jurisdictional surveillance, whereas a small town sheriff's office wouldn't have that.
No.
So by keeping the case local, Radcliffe avoided the embarrassment of an external agency exposing the internal rot. But he also guaranteed the writer's continued anonymity. This jurisdictional containment ensured the case never received the sophisticated analytical tools necessary to track the out of county postmarks, sealing the fate of the investigation within the local vacuum. Yep.
Yeah, back then, little towns didn't play very well with the big guns.
No. They barely do now. What are you talking about?
Well, that's true.
So the true terror from Mary lay in the writer's unparalleled level of personal detail. The writer's choice of Mary's job as a school bus driver was not just about public humiliation. It was about terrorizing her children directly. She had to drive her route every day, knowing the anonymous author could reach the very children that she was tasked with protecting, forcing her family into a state of acute chronic vulnerability.
That's not right.
The daily psychological torture for Mary was relentless. Every morning, she climbed into that big yellow bus, carrying the knowledge that she was the target of a maniac who not only knew her route, but who clearly held the same set of keys or had access to be able to slip a note onto her seat or under a windshield wiper.
Well, I can see you wouldn't need a key for the windshield wiper.
Well, because the buses are locked up in a bus depot. You can't just I can't just go willy nilly into our school bus depot just because I feel like it.
Yeah, the time has changed, though, honey.
That's true. That's true. Maybe you could back then. I don't know.
Well, even now, down where the other grandkids go to school, buses are parked out back.
Oh,
Yeah.
they don't have an actual bus depot?
Well, they do, but it's like on the other side of town.
Oh,
But the buses for the one where the kids go to school,
right.
uh, they're parked right there at the school.
Oh, see, all of our buses, when they're done, that go to the bus depot that's right here in town. Yep. Anyway, so the simple act of stopping at a rural mailbox or a bus stop was fraught with paralyzing risk. Any parked car, any figure standing near a corner, or even a sudden flash of light could have been the rider watching her. She became trapped in a cycle of hypervigilance, knowing the author was using her beloved job as the primary delivery system for her shame. The writer didn't need to physically attack her. The mere act of forcing her to drive that bus every single day, consumed by fear and public shame, was the ultimate form of control. So let's take a moment and imagine the daily routine for Mary. Every time the bus door hissed open, she had to wonder, is this the day the note is taped to the back of a seat? Is the writer watching me from that farmhouse window? The simple act of checking the mailbox, an ordinary mundane act, became a source of paralyzing fear. This consistent low-grade stress, the knowledge that an unseen eye was always on her, eroded her peace in dramatic confrontation, but in the agonizing minute of her daily life. She was living in a town-wide prison, and the anonymous writer held the keys. The failure of law enforcement to intervene early, when the writer was still operating under those self-imposed constraints, means they tragically missed the critical window to de-escalate the situation before the writer felt compelled to resort to physical violence. And that failure wasn't just incompetent, it was a calculated suppression of resources. They deliberately chose not to use the resources at their hands.
See, and they had all these resources, all they had to do
Mhm.
is pick up the phone.
Right, exactly. All they had to do was ask for help, and they chose not to. Because of that, it grew to what it became. So, to truly understand why this case was doomed from the beginning, we have to look beyond the local sheriff and examine the very legal framework that he deliberately bypassed. The tragedy of the Circleville Letters is rooted in a critical failure of jurisdictional management. When Mary Gillespie first brought the letters to Sheriff Radcliffe's office, she was handing him the single most potent piece of evidence that should have immediately mandated federal intervention, and that was the postmark. The letters were meticulously mailed from Columbus, Ohio, a strategic move by the writer to ensure the crime was technically occurring outside of the local Pickaway County Sheriff's Department's primary operational zone. More importantly, this type of organized, malicious mail fraud falls squarely under the purview of the U.S. Postal Inspection Service, which is the oldest federal law enforcement agency that there is.
Are you sure about the
Mhm.
The FBI's been around a long time.
Hang on. I will tell you the date. They were established on August 7th of 1775,
I stand corrected.
making them nearly 250 years old. Its origins trace back to Benjamin Franklin appointing the first surveyor for mail security during the colonial era.
Huh. Well, this is our 250th year as United States.
So basically, as soon as we became a country, this inspection service was created.
Wow,
Isn't that crazy to know that?
that is crazy.
It's your fun fact for the day.
Bet you didn't know.
No. So, under the Postal Reorganization Act of 1970, the USPS held extensive authority over anonymous mail used for extortion, threats, or harassment, especially across county lines. So, because this crossed counties, this was not a local jurisdictional case.
No, it's not.
This was a federal case. But our lovely sheriff over there did not inform them that he got his hands on a federal level case. So, because of that, this case turned into what it was, and the writer has never been identified. Yep, Mama's just shaking her head because I know you guys can't see. Yeah.
Actually, speechless for change.
So the USPS maintains a highly specialized forensic laboratory, and they have resources that are dedicated to analyzing paper fiber, ink composition, glue adhesives, and postmark tracing. This is the exact scientific tools that would have been needed to analyze the meticulously constructed envelopes. They would have been able to identify exactly what was used and exactly where it came from.
I know.
Mhm. So, however, local law enforcement must request this federal assistance. So, even though it is a federal jurisdiction case, they have to notify,
Which the sheriff did.
we have this case, we need you guys to come in, and they didn't do that. So, because of that, resources that they had right there at their fingertips were never used.
Yeah, because there should have been fingerprints on those envelopes.
Right. In a small town, especially in the 70s, they don't really have those resources. Even today, there's a lot of small towns who don't have what they need to take fingerprints and things like that. Like, they don't have a forensic investigation unit. So you need outside help. Like, it's the 70s. What person's thinking, "Oh, I'm gonna leave fingerprints on this?" Like, come on, be real. So by quickly and internally classifying these letters as a domestic disturbance or as a simple low-level harassment, Sheriff Radcliffe effectively created a jurisdictional firewall, keeping the feds out of what he saw as his case. Yeah. So the threshold for federal engagement in anonymous mail crimes often require proof of significant fraud, financial extortion, or an explicit, immediate, imminent threat of physical violence. So because the letters initially targeted reputation and employment matters, that fell under local social code. So Radcliffe's department was able to successfully argue that the case needed to stay local. This legal containment was a catastrophic error. By keeping the case local, Radcliffe avoided the political embarrassment of an external agency exposing the internal problems within his own department. But he also intentionally starved the investigation of federal expertise, and it clearly needed it.
Yeah.
The local department lacked the budget and technical training to properly analyze the envelopes, which we were just talking about. They weren't able to trace the Columbus postmarks or conduct the multi jurisdictional surveillance that would have been required because the feds could have posted someone up in Columbus at the post office, waiting to see who dropped what off.
Because they can find out if they were local or not.
Right. One could have went in undercover as the person that takes the mail from the people that bring it in. But because they didn't do that, that wasn't done. This single political decision prior to prioritizing jurisdictional control over objective truth guaranteed the writer's continued anonymity for the next decade. And all of this terror was funneled directly through Deputy Ronald Gillespie, who felt his life and his professional reputation dissolving under the weight of the public humiliation. The letters addressed to him directly were specifically designed to break him down. They contained specific, chilling, and dangerous advice, using the pretense of moral outrage to provoke him into violence. For, for example, one letter, a clear and undeniable incitement to murder, read, quote, "You should catch them together and kill them both."
Damn!
Yeah. Oops, I don't know what that was. Another questioned his masculinity for tolerating the alleged affair, utilizing the rigid gender norms of the 1970s Midwest to attack his core identity.
Talk about hate.
This emotional terror and toll caused major issues for Ron himself. The constant stress became a physical sickness in his household. Mary later recounted that Ron was barely sleeping. He would often wake up in a cold sweat. He would sit at the kitchen table late into the night, nursing a bottle, meticulously examining the cutout words of the letters by the light of a weak lamp. But he wasn't just reading them. He was trying to climb inside the mind of the person who wrote them, attempting to reverse engineer the monster. He would pace the house, jumping at every ring of the phone, and he had begun drinking heavily and not just at bars, but in secret. But in a secret, tragic, and common reaction to unmanageable stress and profound isolation.
Poor dude.
Yeah. The poison pen had successfully isolated him and broken his spirit, making him prone to reckless and violent actions. Ron was under a very unique kind of pressure. He was a man trained to maintain order and confront threats, yet he was forced into agonizing inaction by the writer's anonymity. He was determined to put a face to the block lettering, and so he began his own intense parallel investigation, utilizing his knowledge as a deputy to run unauthorized private surveillance on his top suspects. These are all actions that would have been illegal even for a simple peace officer.
Because
And
he
he
didn't have a warrant.
Yep. And each of these gave him evidence that he was prepared to take directly to the Ohio BCI, a move that would have exposed the depths of the local jurisdiction failure. This internal war, the rage versus the helplessness, is what made him a target ripe for elimination. Adding to the devastating complexity, we must maintain a little known fact that provides a critical error of tragic irony. Paul Freshour later admitted that he and Ron Gillespie had briefly collaborated to send a few nonviolent, anonymous counter letters early in all of this. So a few of the letters, they were nonviolent. They just kind of got together, send them out because they're nothing. Freshour's intent was not malicious. It was done to scare the real author into stopping by sending notes that suggested they knew who the writer was. Freshour later stated that these letters contained no threats, but his involvement in any anonymous mail meant that the police had a sample of his anonymous writing and block printing. That is important for later. So remember that. This devastating fact explains why investigators were so quick to link Freshour to the crime and creates the ultimate tragedy. Freshour, who was trying to help his family, unwittingly signed his own death warrant by providing the police with the very evidence they would later use to manipulate and convict.
Oh,
Yep,
no good deed goes unpunished.
right. When it was simple, they could have looked at the letters he wrote versus the other one. The handwriting would not have been the same.
No.
Real simple. Anyway, we must also consider the possibility of financial instability contributing to Ron's final and desperate act. In the early months of the terror campaign, Ron Gillespie was reportedly under severe financial strain. He was a high stakes gambler, and there were persistent, if unsubstantiated, rumors of significant debt owed to local figures, a common vulnerability that the letter writer could have easily exploited. So the pressure of the letters combined with potential debt could have created an overwhelming psychological crisis. While officially ruled an accident, or rather be a suicide, investigators failed to thoroughly investigate whether Ron's life insurance policies, if they had existed, contained a clause specifically denying payout for death by suicide, because a lot of them haven't.
Right.
But I couldn't find anything that said he even had policies. So if they did, it suggests a chilling alternative scenario. Did Ron's death serve a secondary financial purpose? Was the anonymous call a setup that Ron, blinded by desperation and liquor, walked into, believing that his death might finally solve his problem, not realizing that he was being killed for the writer's revenge? And let's call this what it is. The failure to investigate this financial angle is yet another black mark on that original investigation. So, this tragic climax of the first phase arrived on the evening of August 19th, 1977. Mary was away visiting family in Florida, and Ron was alone. At approximately 10 p.m., Ron received a mysterious, highly emotional phone call. So we're going to imagine it. Phone rings. Ron answers. He listens, his face draining of color. The conversation is short, perhaps only a few urgent whispered sentences, but whatever was said convinced Ron that the writer had revealed themselves and their location. Ron walked out of the house, his mind consumed by the blinding, explosive rage and shame. He grabbed his keys and his personal .38 caliber revolver, a weapon that was distinct from his service sidearm, strongly suggesting a personal, unauthorized confirmation had been planned. He muttered something about finally confronting the letter writer and sped off into the darkness of his official sheriff's department truck, disappearing into the rural Ohio night. Hours later, Ron's county vehicle was found crashed into a large, sturdy tree on Darby Creek Road. The truck's front end showed significant impact damage, yet Ron was dead from a single gunshot wound to the head.
Makes you wonder.
So did he shoot himself while he was driving?
It's possible.
Yeah, but it doesn't make sense. Why would you do that?
When the impact from hitting the tree would probably kill you.
Right. You can't rule it an accident when there's a gunshot wound. Doesn't make any sense, right?
I mean, that sense to me.
This scene was, obviously, immediately and profoundly suspicious. But the sheriff's department, led by Sheriff Dwight Radcliffe, was astonishingly quick to officially declare it a tragic accident. What about the bullet wound in his head, sir?
That makes it a little difficult to drive with a bullet wound in your head.
Right. The coroner ultimately ruled the death an accidental gunshot wound, citing Ron's blood alcohol content as 0.16, 2 times the legal limit. The physical evidence presented devastating inconsistencies that were fundamentally ignored and often actively suppressed. We're going to break it down
I'm listening.
because it's obviously something's not right here.
Yeah, there's the wrong color somewhere in the crayon box.
Right. The math ain't mathin'. Okay.
Exactly.
So let's first look at the crash itself. There was a complete absence of skid marks on the road, suggesting that Ron did not or could not attempt to stop or swerve, pointing toward a sudden incapacitating event just before the impact. Because who is headed towards a tree and doesn't swerve or slam on their
Try to
brakes?
brake.
Right. There was no evidence that that ever happened.
Well, now if he swerved to keep from hitting something, that came across the road, like a deer or, or something, then I could see that. Because it all happens so fast.
Well, yeah, but there would have been evidence like in the on the shoulder. You know what I mean? Like, because if you look, like, there would have been skid marks coming from the road into the gravel.
Well, what I'm saying is, no, if he swerved to miss whatever was in the road
Right.
and was going fast enough, that tree was right there.
Oh, yeah, if it was close enough, yeah. That's true. Now, if Ron was just simply drunk, okay, and that's what caused this, because that's what the sheriff's office is saying. No,
And if you're drunk, your brain don't work so good.
there should have been some kind of attempt at correction. This further fueled the suspicion that the damage to the truck and the tree was oddly confined. Like it was only to the front of the truck.
Well, if he hit it head on, it would only be the front of the truck.
So this velocity necessary to cause the significant amount of front end damage that might theoretically jar and cause a heavy .38 caliber handgun to fire, because that's what they're saying, that he crashed into the tree and the impact caused the gun to go off, and that's where the head wound came from. Yep.
No, now that don't make sense.
So the velocity that would be necessary to cause this to happen would typically result in a very gruesome scene. But Ron's body position was inconsistent with just a simple drunk driving collision. And then the gun just accidentally happened to go off because he had it in his lap or on the dash or whatever.
No, I don't make
He was found with the fatal wound, but the crash lacked the scattered debris field and rotational force that you would expect from a high speed, uncontrolled impact.
yeah, none of this is mapping.
Because if you're speeding because you're drunk and, your senses aren't about you, if you crash into something, pieces of your vehicle are going to go flying.
No, well,
Typically.
back in those days, the cars were made out of more metal than they were, fiberglass.
Well, remember this is also his sheriff's car.
Right, and they're made out of metal, they're not fiberglass.
Mm,
Back in those days, honey, is what I'm
I
saying.
I've seen some police cars just kinda crumble.
Right, but most of them are made of fiberglass. Back then, they were made of metal.
Okay. But even with that though, like, you're gonna have pieces that just kind of
Okay, yeah,
go,
the little piece.
right, I'm not saying that the whole thing just shattered. You're gonna the headlight and the windshield, things like that, those pieces aren't gonna stay. They're gonna break off and you expect a certain amount of distance. That wasn't here. And the faster you're going, the farther your field is gonna be. So the lack of clear secondary physical evidence here suggested that the focus on the crash was a deliberate red red herring. The evidence strongly pointed to Ron being incapacitated by the bullet before or during the minor collision because it was not as large as they made it sound, implying that his hand was either held or the gun was fired by someone else that was inside the cab, or perhaps that he was maneuvered into a sudden stop where the shot was fired, and the slight collision was the only mechanism to secure the body and weapon. So basically, the evidence that was there, the small debris field, the position in which Ron's body was when he was found, suggests that either someone else was in the cab with him and shot him, which then caused the crash, or he was killed beforehand, the car was crashed.
It was staged.
Right. But they cited it as an accident.
Yeah, I'm gonna say, did they check the gun for fingerprints?
No. But we're going to get into the ballistics of the weapon itself now. So the theory that a heavy, high tension 38 caliber handgun that at a minimum requires 10 pounds of trigger pressure would discharge on a car wreck impact. That's what they're saying. This is highly suspicious and highly improbable.
I was gonna say, I don't see that happening.
So for anyone that does not know, trigger pressure is the amount of pressure you have to put on the trigger in order for the gun to fire. This specific gun, at a minimum, the least amount of pressure kind of depends on if any modifications were made to it, things like that, requires at least 10 pounds on the trigger in order for the gun to go off. In order
And that's
for
a lot of pressure.
right, that's like 1.5 newborn babies if your baby is of average size. For a wreck to cause that much impact to where it causes 10 pounds of pressure on the trigger, you're gonna have some major damage to the body, to the vehicle,
Yeah,
to the tree. That could potentially pull an entire tree out of the ground. The amount of force that would take. So highly improbable. So the spent casing and the projectile from the gun were never definitively recovered either.
They never found the bullet?
the casing.
They never found the gun, the casing,
Well,
nothing?
they found the gun because it was his gun, but they didn't find any projectiles, they didn't find any casings, nothing.
Wouldn't there have been one in his head?
Right.
Unless it was a through and through.
But even in the area, they're saying that it went off during impact.
No, see, that's not highly unlikely.
Right.
Seriously doubt that happened.
Right, but they couldn't find anything.
Well, like I said, if it was 38 special, there wouldn't have been a casing anyway. It would have been in the gun,
Right, right.
still in the chamber
Mhm.
thingy, the rotary thingy. Sorry, gun enthusiasts, I don't know what it's
Oh
called.
my god. Okay, and then perhaps the most largest failure was that the handgun was reportedly never thoroughly or independently examined for fingerprints or trace evidence before being returned to the family. Yep. This completely destroyed any chance to prove if someone else had handled the gun or if it had accidentally discharged. Yeah. Third, we have the suppression of state resources, which we went over. The suspicious circumstances were so irregular that they had actually caught the attention of the Ohio State Highway Patrol, or OSHP. So they're like, something's not right here. Investigators reportedly arrived at the scene. They had attempted to launch a comprehensive external review of the crash site, but they were quickly and decisively blocked by Sheriff Radcliffe's department, which asserted jurisdictional control.
Now, was it Radcliffe that died?
No, it was Mary's husband,
Bless.
Ron. Yep.
Okay.
And the Ohio State Patrol was like, something's not right here. And so they went out to take a good look at the scene. Radcliffe's department blocked them and they asserted jurisdictional control.
Well, see, they were mistaken because the Highway Patrol has jurisdiction over the entire state.
Yep.
So they were out of line. And all they got to do is call the governor.
Yep. So this direct suppression of a state investigative authority is a clear indication of the overall narrative that was prioritized over the truth. So we have to ask, what were they so afraid of? What were they so afraid that the state highway patrol would find?
There is so many scenarios going through my head
Right.
that I'm not going to say any of them.
So fourth, we cannot sit and ignore the political cover-up.
Oh, yeah, it's all political.
The decision to rapidly close this investigation as an accidental death carried massive political weight for Sheriff Dwight Radcliffe. Ron Gillespie's death occurred only months before Radcliffe was up for re-election.
It was an election year.
Mhm.
Aha! That explains a lot.
Opening a major murder case that revolved around a department scandal and an affair would have been catastrophic. The accidental ruling minimized the scandal and ensured institutional continuation. And then finally, there was a posthumous slander. The quick official ruling provided a convenient moral narrative for the community. Ron, the victim of a sophisticated psychological attack, was posthumously stripped of his dignity and his memory was tainted by the official verdict of drunk driving and suicide or accident. So they even threw,
I think it was murder.
oh yeah, they even threw, he committed suicide in there. The writer, sensing the official narrative was faltering, even sent a final taunt to the sheriff's department shortly after the crash. This is known as the gunman hoax. This one claimed Ron had been killed in a bar fight after bragging about finding the letter writer. Yeah, no, it's weird. This provided a false narrative that the sheriff's department was all too willing to accept. So in the end, Ron Gillespie had died twice. Once on Darby Creek Road and again in the official record. The system he served betrayed him by refusing to investigate his death as anything but a liability. To this day, the question hangs heavy over Circleville. Did Ron Gillespie find the letter writer, and was he killed to silence him? Or was the anonymous phone call itself a final fatal trap orchestrated by a figure who knew exactly how to provoke the unstable and desperate deputy? The evidence points strongly to the latter, suggesting a mind capable of planning not just the letters, but the final fatal sequence. The writer achieved the ultimate victory. They had eliminated their primary threat, established a politically convenient cover up, and walked away entirely undetected. The official ruling was instantaneous, but the physical evidence tells an entirely different, far more sinister story. Now, if you apply even basic forensic principles to that crash site, the official narrative disintegrates instantly. But here's the problem: that official ruling, accidental gunshot wound, isn't just, it doesn't just track, it defies basic physics and it defies standardized forensic protocol. Honestly, they were creating a narrative just to cover up the truth.
There's nobody everybody's too damn lazy to investigate it.
Right. Okay, here we go. So I couldn't find the brand, but it is a revolver. I don't know how the fuck I missed that. I didn't put that up there somehow. Mm. So Ron's chosen weapon was his personal high tension 38 caliber double action revolver. To discharge such a weapon, the shooter must apply significant pressure. This is often anywhere from 10 to 12 pounds of pressure to the trigger in the double action mode. You know what that means?
No, I don't have a clue.
I should have put it in there. I didn't. So this refers to a firing mechanism where a single pull of the trigger performs two functions. First, it cocks the hammer back, then it releases it to fire the round.
Okay.
Okay, the theory that this heavy high tension weapon discharged upon the truck's frontal impact is physically improbable. For an impact to cause the hammer to fall, the force would have had to travel through the steering column or dashboard, precisely manipulating the small recessed trigger. So in other words, this is not a gun that has a hair trigger. You can't just barely touch it and it go off.
If you pull it, you're gonna do some damage.
Right. It takes a lot of pressure to make this thing go off. The burden of proof to show the weapon was defective or had a non-standard hair trigger was entirely on the investigators, and no such finding was ever presented, even though it was there to the making of the gun itself. Furthermore, like I said before, a proper ballistic analysis should have been mandatory, but it was never conducted, or it was conducted and then suppressed.
Either one, this latter wouldn't surprise you.
No. So, a standard postmortem examination of a gunshot death requires the forensic pathologist to map the bullet's trajectory, its angle, entrance, and exit point. Reports later suggested that the entrance room was located not on the body, but in a way consistent with the gun being knocked forward onto his head, but rather on the temple or slightly behind the ear, an angle that is highly suspicious for a self inflicted contact wound caused
Because
by a
most
vehicle accident.
here,
Hmm.
it's kinda hard to shoot yourself like this,
Right.
is the way you got yourself cocked,
Hmm.
you know? This and most and I hate to say this then because it just is wrong, most officers will eat their gun, and that's I'm sure everybody can figure out what that is.
Right.
I hate to say it, but it happens more often than not,
Sadly, yes.
and it's usually the good ones. Uh, but I can't see this slightly behind the ear. It just
That wouldn't
that's
be easy to do,
no, it's not.
especially with this type of gun.
No, because it's probably about that long,
Hmm.
and you're like this, and if it's you know
And if he's driving as they said he was,
that ain't
that's
happening.
that's a hard angle to get to.
That ain't happening.
Yeah. So the failure to accurately document the trajectory, or worse, the suppression of that data, allowed the accidental narrative to stand unchallenged. And then perhaps the most biggest forensic omission was the failure to perform a gunshot residue test on Ron's hands, which is standard.
Yeah, and it's just a little wipey
Yep. And if there's
sent
gunshot
to the
residue,
lab.
I think it turns purple, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, they gotta take it to the lab to analyze it or some stuff. I'm just going by what I see on TV.
Yeah, they swab it, and if I remember correctly, it's like a special like liquid that they put on it, and it changes color.
But they don't do it there, they have to send it to the lab to
Right,
do it.
right.
There's a special component of
Mhm.
liquids and stuff. I don't know. I just know what I see them do on TV.
Yep. They didn't do that. That would have told them if he had shot himself or not.
I know it.
Yep. So the GSR test is a standard protocol for anyone that doesn't know to determine if anyone has personally fired a weapon. While GSR tests in the 1970s were not as refined as the modern ones, the absence of any attempt to gather this crucial evidence suggests an investigative team determined to avoid any evidence that challenged the suicide or accidental ruling. They knew that by doing this, it could possibly dismantle their entire ruling.
Oh, yeah.
Yep. They just didn't do it. Finally, you have the missing projectile itself, and that's a major red flag. So a 38 caliber bullet, even one fired at close range inside a truck cab, will often embed into the vehicle's interior.
If it goes through.
So the failure to definitively locate, recover, and trace the slug and the casing destroyed the only chance to prove that the gun had, in fact, been fired by Ron and that a second person had not removed the evidence.
Yeah, there's somebody else in that cab. I'm sorry.
Yeah, because they never found it. So where if he did it, where are these things?
I've heard the hell, shoot, my ears would still be ringing.
Right. So the quick return of the weapon to the family erased the chance for that external, unbiased forensic analysis to happen later, cementing the official suppression of the truth. So for 6 long, terrifying years following Ron's death, the terror campaign continuing unwavered. Mary lived every day in a state of hypervigilance, forced to accept her own isolation by the system that had failed her husband. The letters continued to arrive, cold, printed, and utterly defiant. The author was emboldened by the failure of the authorities to solve the death of one of their own. The case finally took a definitive, though deeply misleading turn in February of 1983. Mary Gillespie was driving her bus route when she found a crudely made sign posted on a fence post. Now, crucially, only 2 months earlier, in December of 1982, Mary had received a specific harrowing threat in a Christmas card that warned the writer had begun posting signs specifically about her daughter. This elevated the threat from professional sabotage to direct harm to her child. So when Mary stopped the bus to remove this sign, her mind likely focused on protecting her daughter's reputation. As she touched the sign, she found it was tied with a length of string to a small wooden box resting against the post. So again, we're going to put our imagination caps on. Mary, after 6 years of looking over her shoulder, pulls the bus over. The air is cold and still. She gets out, walks towards the fence, and sees the sign. It's poorly made, intentionally crude, but she knows instantly that it's from him. She reaches out, and as she touches the sign, she releases the string, pulling something. She realizes the string is pulling something. The sound is a small, horrifying click from the box at the base of the post. The device the string was pulling on was a loaded Remington 22 caliber pistol, rigged as a booby trap set to fire when the sign was pulled, and it had misfired.
Oh my god.
Yep. So oh, the silence after that misfire must have been the loudest sound Mary had ever heard. The sound of her own life being given back by a fraction of an inch and a faulty mechanism. Mary had stared down death, not in a dark alley, but on her routine school route, a public place, maximizing the terror. The device itself was a crude, deadly piece of engineering. A Remington 22 caliber pistol taped to the inside of a small box, with a fishing line tautly attached to the trigger and run to the threatening sign posted on the fence. When Mary tugged the sign, the line pulled the trigger. Crucially, the round was live. 20 was a live 22 short cartridge, but the hammer strike was weak, just weak enough to leave a dent, but not for a full discharge. The distance,
Good gravy.
hmm the distance from the muzzle of the gun to Mary's body would have been mere inches. So had it went off, it would have killed her. That fractional failure saved her life.
Thank God.
When investigators arrived to the scene, they secured the device, and within hours, forensic personnel from the Ohio BCI finally traced the serial number back through manufacturer records and retail sales. The chain led them directly to one man, Paul Freshour, Ron Gillespie's brother-in-law, a military veteran with mechanical aptitude. While Freshour vehemently claimed the weapon had been stolen from his garage weeks prior, the police had their evidence, which was a tangible link between the accused and the attempted assassination. This was exactly what the prosecution needed to close the political wound left by Ron's death. The construction of the booby trap pistol, specifically the wiring of the trip mechanism and the custom assembly of the firing pin, required a high degree of mechanical aptitude, precision soldering, and engineering knowledge. This technical sophistication suggested the writer was a skilled tradesman or an engineer capable of meticulous work. This characteristic was ironically one of the primary reasons investigators fixated on Paul Freshour from the very beginning. The prosecution's theory of motive was thin and purely domestic. They alleged that Freshour was angry at his wife, Karen Sue, and believed Mary Gillespie was siding with her in their custody battle. I know what you're thinking. Why kill Mary? Why not? You shouldn't kill anyone. We don't kill people. But why would
It
you?
would make more sense to kill his wife than it would Mary.
Right? Why would you go after Mary? Doesn't make any sense. You don't kill anybody, but it just the logic of it makes zero sense.
Right?
So this weak personal grievance stood in stark contrast to the sustained, calculated social terrorism of the actual writer. Now, the prosecution's entire case against Freshour was built on tragically flawed pillars and discredited science. First, there was the missing physical link and evidence tampering. The Ohio Bureau of Criminal Investigation, or the BCI, lab was unable to definitively link the gun or the firing pin recovered from the booby trap. More damningly, a box containing the original Circleville letters given to the sheriff's department by Mary Gillespie had disappeared for over a year and had mysteriously reappeared contaminated with documents allegedly belonging to Paul Freshour.
Somebody was setting his ass up.
Yep. A catastrophic evidence trail break suggesting evidence tampering or extreme negligence.
Either or.
Right. Second, the case relied heavily on the highly subjective and ultimately discredited forensic document analysis of the 1980s. They used the unreliable ribbon method, claiming to have found fragments of text matching the letters on a used ribbon allegedly belonging to Paul. So this ribbon method technique involved painstakingly lifting microscopic impressions of previous key strikes from the ribbon surface on typewriter and is now widely scrutinized as forensic pseudoscience because it relies heavily on an operator expectation bias. Here the analysis intended to, see what they were looking for, confirming the police's pre-existing suspect. So they take a typewriter, they look at the ribbon and say, oh, yeah, he used these letters, so he had to have written it.
Junk science.
Yeah, pretty much. Third, they use the flawed typeface analysis to match minute flaws in the keys in Freshour's Corona typewriter The analysis claimed a defect on the letter S was unique. The problem is that in forensic document examination, one must distinguish between class characteristics, which are features common to an entire group, like a model of typewriter, and then individual characteristics, which are unique flaws developed through use, like a deep scratch. So you have class characteristics where it's the entire group of the same thing has this flaw. Then you have individual ones where it's, okay, just this one has it because of use over time. So they allege that the defect on the S was a class characteristic common to hundreds of thousands of identical typewriter machines sold in the US.
Well, yeah, back then.
The exact same brand that Paul Freshour had the exact same defect.
Not the manufacturer defect.
Exactly. By presenting this statistical noise as proof of guilt, the prosecution undermined the very foundation of document examination. This was not a him issue. The typewriter evidence did not prove Freshour wrote the letters. All it proves is that he owned a common machine and that the letter writer owned the exact same one.
Doesn't prove nothing.
Exactly. The lack of scrutiny applied in 1983 was later corrected by independent experts. After Paul Freshour's case gained national attention, forensic profilers and document experts weighed in. They noted forensic document expert Beverly East, who, after carefully examining the collected letters against Freshour's known handwriting, definitively stated that Paul Freshour was not the author of the majority of the Circleville letters. Now remember, he admitted that he had written some of them to try to get the author to knock it off.
Right.
But most of them, she said, were not written by Paul. This professional consensus reached years after his conviction. It exposed the fatal bias and incompetence of the original analysis, confirming the trial was a miscarriage of justice built on faulty scientific testimony. So he was convicted on junk science. Now, let's look at the language itself, because forensic analysis of the language further destroys the single author theory focused on Freshour. Linguistics studying the letters noted that the collected sample contained two distinct sociolinguistic styles. So the first, which I'm going to call style A, was characterized by simpler sentence structure, poor grammar, inconsistent capitalization. They often missed commas and periods, and they used a stream of consciousness flow. And they also utilized highly aggressive, vulgar street language. So this style supports the writer's attempt at performative illiteracy, suggesting a lower educational background. Then we have the second style, which we're going to call style B. This one used more complex and compound sentence structure, better grammar, a more sophisticated vocabulary. This one often used institutional or technical language, a key detail that aligns perfectly with the disgraced deputy theory, or the writer being someone who spent time in a professional bureaucratic environment. So the sheer volume and range of the letters strongly suggest either a highly sophisticated single author capable of code switching to deliberately mislead investigators, or more likely, a folie à deux, where two distinct individuals, one who collected the gossip, which is style A, their emotional violence, and then one who had the professional knowledge, so style B, who offered the technical syntax, more collaborated. Two single individuals came together to write these letters.
One person with multiple personalities.
Right. Which two people doing it would make sense for over 400 pieces of anonymous writing.
That's too much like work.
Right. So the switch in style gave the impression of two separate threats, which obviously deepens the chaos. The most chilling linguistic evidence of collaboration came later in the campaign when the author or authors began consistently using the plural pronouns, we or us in the threats.
Oh, the
One
plot thickens.
Right. One of these letters stated, quote, "You will be sorry you messed with us." Another read, quote, "We know what you did." While the use of "we" could be a theatrical device to imply the writer's sense of power, in the context of the dual linguistic styles and the incredible duration and complexity of the campaign, managing the Columbus postmarks, gathering information, and building the trap, the folie à deux theory becomes the most intellectually robust explanation for this. This theory poses that the case was perpetrated by two individuals who shared a delusional system, most likely two people that were close to the victim, possibly Ron's sister Karen Sue and another trusted associate, or another deputy and a different person. One person provided the technical skill and institutional knowledge, and the other provided the relentless, petty, interpersonal rage. The use of "we" signaled their true identity as a coordinated team, not just a singular maniac. Most shockingly, though, Paul Freshour was never asked, nor was he compelled to take a polygraph regarding the attempted murder. This strongly suggests that the key decision makers prioritized securing a quick conviction over establishing factual guilt, thereby cementing the frame job. Now, when Paul went to trial, the atmosphere of that courtroom was thick with local prejudice, and a jury convicted him in October of 1983 of attempted murder. He was sentenced to a staggering 7 to 25 years.
Damn.
The town, desperate for closure, had sacrificed justice to achieve the illusion of order. The system had locked away the most convenient scapegoat. The community breathed a collective, self-satisfied sigh of relief. The sheriff had his conviction. The case was closed. But the incarceration of Paul Freshour did not stop the letters. This simple, irrefutable fact is the most powerful evidence of his innocence and constituted a massive ongoing Brady violation on the part of the state. Because that was clear proof that he was innocent. The writer was so arrogant, so high on their sense of impunity, that they began corresponding directly with their framed victim.
Oh, crap.
When one of his parole requests was denied, the writer sent a letter containing only two words, quote, "You lost." This direct taunt demonstrated a chilling level of sadism and continued psychological investment in the case. When the writer began sending letters to Paul's wife, Mary Freshour,
And these Marys are the name Mary is getting a bad rep in this thing.
I know, with clear information about Paul's status inside the prison, so the writer even knew what was going on inside the prison. Investigators discovered the prison's mail was being directed through a single outside mailing service or a specific trusted intermediary, proving the writer's reach extended directly into the correctional facility's logistics chain. So whoever this is has got a pretty long reach.
No, crap.
The writer was using the prison's own flawed internal mail processing system as a dead drop. The continuation of the letters was so embarrassing that the prison warden ordered Paul placed in solitary confinement.
See, and
Yep.
that's not right.
He was trapped in a Kafkaesque nightmare. The very proof of his innocence was the cause of his maximum punishment. Yet, even from isolation, the Circleville Letters still continued. Paul Freshour utilized one of the few outlets that he had available to him. He maintained a years-long communication with a local newspaper journalist, writing dozens of detailed, meticulously argued letters to the editor from his cell. This was his only defense, a plea to the public outside the corrupt system. For 10 years, he maintained his integrity, refusing to admit guilt to the parole board and choosing incarceration over the easy lie of confession. His refusal to confess, a move that would cut years off his sentence, is one of the strongest indicators of his profound, stubborn innocence. He refused to give the anonymous author the final satisfying victory of a lie. The ultimate vindication for Paul Freshour was achieved not through local law enforcement, but through the intervention of the national media. This began with intentional local coverage. For years, the Columbus Dispatch provided consistent, detailed, and skeptical reportings, keeping the story alive despite the official efforts to bury it. Then came the national spotlight in the 1990s, and it changed everything. The case received a major national attention on shows like Unsolved Mysteries and later a crucial investigative segment on 60 Minutes.
Dang.
This national spotlight exposed the sheer absurdity of the conviction, the blatant conflicts of interest, and the continued letters. This external pressure effectively removed the case from the Pickaway County vacuum and put it onto the national stage. And the writer watching this coverage could not resist a final arrogant taunt directly to the media. When the producers of Unsolved Mysteries began their investigation, they received a postcard explicitly warning them away from the case. The card read, quote, "Forget Circleville, Ohio. Do nothing to hurt Sheriff Radcliffe. If you come to Ohio, you El Sickos will pay. The Circleville Writer." Mm-hmm.
That's crazy.
Yep. This act provided an unmistakable link between the original author and the man who orchestrated the cover up. Then the official political response finally came in 2007. Governor Ted Strickland's unconditional pardon of Paul Freshour came in 2007. This was a political acknowledgement that the state had failed, using the undeniable fact of the continuing letters as the sole non-negotiable bias for clearing Freshour's name. Crucially, no financial restitution was ever offered to his family. Despite the pardon, Sheriff Dwight Radcliffe suffered no professional consequences for his handling of the case. He successfully ran for and won re-election several times after 1977. This is a stark testament to the successful execution of the cover-up. Now, following Paul's death and the pardon, his family pursued a civil lawsuit against Sheriff Dwight Radcliffe and other officials, citing wrongful prosecution, but this civil action was ultimately unsuccessful. The failure of the civil suit provided a final painful confirmation that the institutional and financial accountability for the decade-long injustice was legally suppressed. The core legal scandal here is the large and ongoing failure to uphold the Brady Rule. Now, the Brady Rule, which was established by the U.S. Supreme Court in the case Brady versus Maryland in 1963, requires that the prosecution must disclose all exculpatory evidence that is favorable to the defendant
Yes.
to the defense. In the Circleville case, the sheriff's department and prosecution were aware of two massive Brady violations here. First was the continuing letters. The letters received after Freshour's incarceration were the clearest form of exculpatory evidence possible. By suppressing this information, the prosecution effectively manufactured the narrative of Freshour's guilt. A clear Brady violation. Even after he was convicted, those letters should have been taken to his defense team.
And he should have gotten a new trial.
Right. The second is the missing evidence. The disappearance and compromised reappearance of the original box of letters can constitute.
And didn't you say there was more added to it?
Mhm.
Yes. Something's not right there. Something's wrong in the sheriff's department.
Yep. So that original box of letters, it's evidence tampering, or it's gross negligence, or both.
Evidence tampering. Ugh.
This not handing this over, not telling them this, denied the defense the ability to properly conduct their own forensic analysis of those letters. The lack of legal consequences for Sheriff Radcliffe, despite the governor's pardon, highlights a deep-seated problem in the American rural law enforcement, and that is the principle of qualified immunity. which often shields public officials from civil liability, even in cases of gross misconduct. And this protects the very officials who orchestrated this catastrophic injustice. Yep. But why? How, in the face of a governor's pardon, could the system still deny the Freshour family justice? And that answer lies in the massive legal shield that it's protecting government officials from being held accountable. The failure of the Freshour family's civil lawsuit against Sheriff Radcliffe and the Pickaway County officials highlights one of the most persistent failures in the American legal system. Which, sorry, thought I had to yawn again. Which, like I said, is the doctrine of qualified immunity, or QI. A lot of people will just call it that. So to explain this a little bit more, QI protects government officials from civil liability unless their actions violated a clearly established statutory or constitutional right, and the injured party can prove the official knew that they were violating the law.
And they did.
They broke constitutional law, yes, but they couldn't prove that those officials they were suing knew they were
Oh,
doing.
they knew about it.
Oh, yeah, they did. We all know they did, but they couldn't prove it without a doubt.
Well, the courts even knew it.
Mhm. So this is an almost insurmountable burden of proof. In this case, the suppression of the continuing letter constituted an undeniable Brady violation. That's withholding exculpatory evidence. However, to win a civil suit for malice prosecution or conspiracy of silence, the family had to prove that Radcliffe and the other officials themselves acted with actual malice and deliberately framed Freshour, not just that they were incompetent. They had to prove that they purposely did this.
Well, they did.
Well, we know they did, but there was no proof of it. That's the crappy part of qualified immunity. You have to physically prove it. So the civil Yep. So the civil legal process, or better known as, discovery, is designed to force disclosure of evidence. But when the evidence trail is already corrupted or disappears, like the missing box of letters, and the defendants are protected by a conspiracy of silence within that institution, proving that level of deliberate malice in a civil court case becomes functionally impossible, because it's all fake from the very beginning. It's all tainted. It's not like this was a clear case and, it's in the records that there were this many letters and then, oh, all of a sudden the box is gone and now there's 20 extra. That would prove it. But there was nothing like that here. The failure of the civil action provided the final cold confirmation that the institutional and financial accountability for the decade of Paul Freshour's stolen life was successfully legally suppressed. The state admitted that the conviction was wrong via the pardon, but the system refused to pay for the decade of injustice it caused, leaving the family with the moral victory of a pardon but no financial or judicial closure. So, who was the writer? The most likely theory remains to be the disgraced deputy, most likely a former sheriff's deputy who was either fired or passed over for promotion, resulting in deep institutional resentment. So this theory explains every major inconsistency here. First, we have the motive. The attack on the entire social structure, and especially Ron Gillespie, a current deputy, would be revenge against the institution that had rejected him. Second is the access. A former deputy would have the intimate knowledge of the Gillespies' personal life, the internal workings of the sheriff's office, and the names of local officials and their secrets. Third is the tradecraft. A law enforcement background explains the highly effective security measures, mailings from Columbus, using block letters, and knowing the legal vulnerabilities of the investigation, like exploiting the sheriff's jurisdiction limit. Fourth is the phone tap rumors. A deputy would have the means or contacts to tap or intercept local phone lines, explaining the writer's profound access to private conversations. And when you combine this with the folie à deux theory, the disgraced deputy acts as the primary orchestrator, while the co-conspirator handles the mailing logistics, postmarking from Columbus, and the communication with Freshour in prison, providing an alibi for the primary author. What?
Just thinking on who it could be.
Yep. This complexity of operation points directly away from Paul Freshour and toward a figure highly adept in navigating and subventing the justice system. The individual or individuals who successfully orchestrated a murder, attempted a second murder, framed an innocent man, and continued to operate the terror campaign for over a decade were never identified, arrested, or brought in for justice. In the end, they had won. Now, while the evidence points heavily toward an institutional actor, the disgraced deputy, there's one final crucial piece of the puzzle that explains the sheer venom and intimacy of the letters. The most robust theory suggests that the writer did not work alone, as we discussed. They had a partner, someone with a deep domestic motive. So while the technical complexity of the booby trap and the sophisticated mail logistics point towards a former law enforcement figure, the content and tone of the letters themselves suggest, like I said, a folie à deux, involving not just anyone, but the involvement of a female collaborator. Someone deeply invested in the social destruction of Mary Gillespie. Because you had letters pointed towards Mary, and there were letters pointed towards the overall structure and the powers that are
Powers
in,
that be.
the powers that be in Circleville. The letter's central preoccupation was Mary's alleged affair and her morality, not just Ron's institutional failure. They utilized highly gendered, moralizing, and vulgar language to attack Mary's role as a public servant and as a woman. This obsession with purifying the town's social code and destroying reputation aligns more with the psychological profile of a female antagonist acting out of repressed social envy or moralistic rage. This analysis brings us directly to a key figure, Karen Sue Adams, Ron Gillespie's sister. Karen Sue had intimate, deep-rooted access to the family's most sensitive information, the very gossip and personal arguments that fueled the vile letters. Her deep involvement in a bitter custody battle provided a profound personal and tangible motive for the framing. By setting up her estranged husband as the villain, she could have secured an emotional victory and a legal advantage in the custody of her children. The "we" letters, like, quote, "You will be sorry you messed with us," further solidified this theory. The partnership likely worked like this. The orchestrator, the former deputy, provided the technical and institutional expertise, postmarking from Columbus, and knowledge of police vulnerabilities. Then you have the enforcer, would be the female co-conspirator, provided the specific, vicious, and detailed personal gossip they executed the physical mailing runs, and most critically, had the strongest motive and access to frame Paul by planting or supplying the materials, like the gun or the typewriter evidence, to be found by investigators. The collaboration allowed the campaign to achieve maximum effect, the institutional threat combined with the domestic terror, all of that. The complexity of the letters and the assassination attempt demanded more than just one actor. It demanded two separate yet mutually invested people. The focus on Freshour was a convenient, politically motivated scapegoat, but the true perpetrator was always hiding in plain sight, leveraging intimate family knowledge to escape justice. Jesus Christ, how long is this? I don't even remember. To understand the unique horror of the Circleville case, we must look at how it compares to other poison pen cases, which rarely escalate to violence. We can contrast it with the Witch of Wyndon case in Australia of 1947, where an anonymous writer sent hundreds of slanderous letters and the town descended into paranoia, much like Circleville, but the campaign never became violent. Or the Canton poisoner case from New York in 1976 and 1977, which involved a writer sending letters falsely accusing people of being child molesters.
Dang.
In both of these examples, the weapon was purely psychological. It never turned violent. The transition to violence in the Circleville case, from Ron's mysterious death to the assassination attempt on Mary, elevates this from a criminal nuisance to a case study in escalation. It demonstrates the profound narcissistic injury of the writer. When their psychological terrorism failed to achieve the desired effect, public confession and shame, they felt compelled to enforce their moral will physically. This calculated shift from writing to rigging a gun shows a perpetrator who saw the destruction of a life as a means to restore their own warped sense of cosmic order. Then the final tragedy of Paul Freshour's life is defined by the distinction between a pardon and a full judicial exoneration. That's ultimately the you know. So a pardon, while clearing a conviction, implies forgiveness or mitigation of the crime. It does not explicitly declare that the person is innocent. While a full judicial exoneration, usually achieved through a court order, definitively states that the person did not commit the crime and is typically the gateway to financial compensation. Paul Freshour was granted a pardon, a political act, but he died before ever receiving his full court ordered exoneration. His family's continuing fight is not for money, but for the moral and legal distinction of absolute innocence, a status that the state of Ohio has yet to grant fully, ensuring that the legal record, despite the governor's admission of failure, remains tangled and incomplete. The state's failure to offer restitution is the ultimate cold institutional denial of full accountability for the decade of his life that they stole. So now we return to Circleville itself to understand the enduring failure of justice. The town operated on a core unspoken agreement. The preservation of local reputation is paramount to the preservation of public truth. The social function of secrecy explains the rapid closure of Ron's death and the desperate need to convict someone, anyone, even if the evidence was junk science. The real threat to the community was not Paul Freshour. It was instead the anonymity of evil. To admit the truth, that a sophisticated psychopath was walking free in their town, possibly an institutional figure, would destroy the town's conservative moral self-image. By creating the Paul Freshour scapegoat narrative, the political structure was able to convince the public and themselves that the order was restored, the monster was caged, and the social contract was repaired. This defense mechanism, the collective choice of comforting lies over disturbing truth, is the final, most important layer of the Circleville story. The sheriff and the system acted not just out of incompetence, but as protectors of the town's social fabric, even if it meant sacrificing an innocent man. The relentless cycle of accusation, conviction, and undeniable proof of innocence transformed the Circleville Letters into a national true crime legend. The true lasting consequence of these letters is that the anonymity successfully destroyed the foundation of the small town's trust. The writer didn't just frame one man. They poisoned the entire well of the community's conscience. And to this day, the specter of the anonymous threat remains a permanent shadow of Circleville, Ohio. And that is our deep dive and coverage of the Circleville Letters,
That was just freaking crazy.
right? This is a mystery that still is there. It has haunted Ohio for nearly 50 years.
And most of the key players are probably dead by now.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Writer's dead by now, I guarantee.
Oh, yeah. For sure. Isn't that crazy?
Hey, that's crazy.
Now, guys, we want to know what you think. Head over to our socials and tell us. Okay? Considering the weak domestic motive used by the prosecution compared to the sustained, highly tactical nature of the terror campaign, do you believe the state of Ohio knowingly manufactured the case against Freshour? Or was the failure simply the catastrophic result of an incompetent investigation? We want to know what your theories are.
Yeah, I'd like to know because I got a whole bunch of them running in my head, and a lot of them could get me into trouble.
I think, I think the former deputy or current deputy, possibly, and then a female co-conspirator. That's what I think. So for next week, we're gonna leave Circleville and we're gonna head to the North American waterways for a case that has been one of the most covered, but we're going to approach it a little differently. We're going to explore this theory surrounding a shadowy anonymous group. We're talking about a series of victims, primarily young men, whose tragic deaths have been officially ruled as drowning accidents, but whose cases share a single unnerving and possibly manufactured signature. A reoccurring piece of crude graffiti found near the recovery sites. We're going to dive into the conspiracy, the evidence, and the theories that suggest the truth might be much darker than an accidental slip and fall. So join us next week as we explore the disturbing possibility of a connected network of serial killers known only by a cryptic piece of graffiti. And that's all I got.
I don't have a clue what you're talking about, but I want to hear about it.
Yep, that's all I got for that one.
That's crazy.
Mhm.
Somebody had too much time on their hands,
I know, that's what I'm saying. Get a
or they're
hobby.
so jealous of other people's lives. I mean, come on.
Maybe. I mean, some people are that miserable that they have to make everybody else miserable. I've known a few in my life.
Oh, we all.
Got anything else?
Nope, I ain't got nothing. I'm just. I hope everybody had a safe and happy New Year.
Yep.
We stayed home.
Yep.
We ain't stupid,
Nope.
and Mama cooked on New Year's Day
Yep. All
because
right.
that's what my boys wanted.
Yep. A long day tomorrow.
Yeah, you do. I get to sleep in.
I know. Oh my god.
Better you than me, baby. I've had my
4,
years of that.
4 kids in a mall.
And your mother-in-law and your husband. What am I talking about?
Right.
Just kidding.
4 kids in a mall playing with slime. Oh, it's gonna be a mess.
That you'll have a ball.
3 of them preteens.
And the one you have to worry about is gonna be the little one.
Yep. And then a giant, I don't even know.
Some kind of fun park type.
Yeah. Got trampolines and towers and slides and oh,
I know 2 little boys go sleep good tomorrow night.
oh yeah. It's gonna be a long day. But anyway, come back next week for that one. It'll be a good one. We're gonna get off here, go to bed. Have a long day tomorrow. Yep. So until next week, guys, keep your secrets safe. Don't forget to check your mail carefully. And as always, we hope you keep listening and remember to
Watch out for monsters.
and don't kill people. Bye, y'all.
Bye, y'all. Can I get this thing out of my face now?